just now joining us. I think the number is getting bigger and bigger. Okay. Yes, Jafar Hongen, shall we start now?
Yes.
So you're the boss.
My time is 5:02. I don't know, it could be same with yours, I think. Well, the second part of your hour should be the same, not the first part. I think, I know it's too early, you know, for you, Jafar, in the United States. Good morning to you. And good evening to you, Hongen. And also good afternoon and good evening to all our participants, audience, okay? Welcome to our session of this week. I can see that some of our colleagues, you know, participants are from Turkey. So they already know that we have launched this lecture series beginning from this month, just to exchange some ideas, you know, in different topics such as research methods, you know, academic writing, publishing, and getting you know, to know about different aspects of social sciences. So usually we have guests from Turkey in Turkish, but this time we have the exception. Once a month we will have an exception for an international scholar. This person will talk about a different topic in English. So this week's guest is Professor Jafar Jafari from United States. I will introduce him later on. And my co-moderator is Hongen from Hong Kong Polytechnic and University. He is the associate professor over there. He is also the managing editor of Journal of China Tourism. Well, why we will talk about now, or what we will talk about in this today's lecture series. As we know, this is not the exception for this year. You know, the year of this pandemics, you know, COVID-19 exists. But before then, still before, you know, this year, we had so many articles, journals, books, and, you know, conference organizations, conference papers all over the world. So the number still is, you know, increasing. And we also a number of universities delivering different, you know, degrees in bachelor's, master's, or PhDs from US to, you know, New Zealand, Australia. And as we know, well, we will discuss about the history of, you know, tourism studies a little bit here. But we know that the background of tourism studies in its modern terms is not too long. So let's say 50 or only 50 or 60 years. But then we look at, you know, other fields, the historical background of other fields like sociology, economics, you know, psychology, or some others. It may have more than, you know, 300 or 400 years, you know, in the history. But Jafar is one of our experts who will perhaps touch upon if there could be any difference between the number of, you know, the outlets, publication outlets, you know, and the number of similar outlets in tourism studies. Well, now in this lecture, I don't want to call it webinar. This is a, you know, a lecture, going to be a kind of dialogue between three of us. So today we will begin with the start of academic journals. As we know they are the vehicles transferring the knowledge in our own fields or across the fields. So today we have Jafar Jafari. He is the founding editor of Annals of Tourism Research. This is one of the oldest journals in our field. And it is still, to me, it's still the most reputable journal all over the world. So Jafar will be our guest. He launched the journal Annals of Tourism Research in 1973, and I think continued as the editor until the end of 2007, I think, right, Jafar?
I think so. I can't remember.
So you led this journal, let's say, as the editor for 34 consecutive years.
Correct.
Without stopping. Jafar is also the founding president of our academy, the International Academy of Tourism Studies. He is the founder of this international network on the internet called Trinet. That is very useful for us for exchange of ideas. He is the co-editor of Tourism Encyclopedia, the first encyclopedia in our field, and the other co-editor is Hongen. They worked together for years to produce this encyclopedia. But I think most importantly, just in recognition of his contributions to the field of tourism as a part of social sciences, Jafar received the United Nations World Tourism Organization ULIS prize in 2005. So he has been, well, now I think he must be desperate of not traveling too much, but I think he might be lucky as well, not traveling too much this year. But before that, he had been traveling a lot. So it was not possible to find him in a certain place when you sent an email to him or when you receive an email from himself. So he has been the consultant or advisor to many universities, banks, and ministries of tourism across the world. Yes, Hongen, so the floor is yours. We should start with one of your questions.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Martin, very much for inviting me. And I understand this is the starting point of a series of lectures or seminar, if you wish. And I also understand that COVID-19 has changed the mode of doing things like this. And consequently, we are working around the clock. We have meetings at midnight. We have meetings, at different time of the day.
At least we don't have the problem of jet lag, I think.
No.
We are more safe now.
Yeah, and I understand the main guest is Jafar. However, he said he doesn't want to play a solo. And Martin is the moderator. However, he doesn't want to play a solo either. So I'm joining to make it a trios, largely through a kind of rejoinder and commentary or raising or asking questions. And if I understand correctly, the topic for today is journals, academic journals in tourism studies. We know we have many, many journals now. In the past, we have fewer and fewer, but if we trace the dates back to the 1970s, for example, early 1970s, we have really only very few journals, but one of which is Annals of Tourism Research. And Jafar Jafari is the founding editor of that journal starting from 1973, if I remember correctly. So I will start from here by asking Jafar a very simple question or basic question. I mean, from today's standpoint, but from today's standpoint, it's a very basic question or simple question. why in the first place do you plan to start a journal, or what's the vision that you were having in those years, in 1970s, early 1970s, to start a journal which has now become a very top journal in the field? Jafar.
Well, thank you very much, Metin. Thank you very much, Hong Kong, for for setting the stage and introducing me so generously. Thank you very much. And good day, good night, good evening to our colleagues across the world. I see that majority of the participants have Turkish sounding names, so I assume that is the case. And I'm delighted to be with you. I have been many times to Turkey, beautiful Turkey, Istanbul, and other cities. Some of those conferences were hosted by Dr. Kozak himself and some with UNWTO, etc. So it's a country that I love. It's a beautiful country. It's fantastic culture, and of course, food too. And I confess that Turkish coffee and Turkish baklava is definitely the best. And also, thank you very much for mentioning social sciences, Metin, at your introduction. This is the way I look at tourism. To me, tourism is a study within the social sciences. I know some people take it as an industry. Well, it is an industry, but I don't study that as an industry. To me, to understand tourism, you have to look at tourism as a phenomenon, not just as business, not just as marketing, not just as management, not just as geography, et cetera, et cetera. It's a combination of everything. So it's the phenomenon that needs to be understood. When we understand the phenomenon, then we can apply marketing, then we can apply management, then we can talk about balance of payments, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for making that point, the social science, which is my direction. And that's the subtitle we give to Annals of Tourism Research, by the way, a social sciences journal. And in contrast to some other webinars you all have participated, this is a dialogue, as Hangen mentioned it. So it's not that I'm the main speaker, all three of us are speakers. It's a panel of three persons, basically. Maybe I talk too much, and my two colleagues would jump in and contribute. So it's going to be an exchange of ideas rather than me always talking. Now, again, going to your question, why did I get the idea for Annals? When I was studying for my master's degree at Cornell University, I was in School of Hotel Administration, and I wanted to do tourism. And Cornell did not offer tourism as such, not even a single course, let alone a degree. So I managed to find one of the professors of hotel management and convince him to become my thesis advisor. He says, well, I know nothing about tourism, but fine, I will become your advisor. So he was my advisor. Professor Paul Broughton, who later on became the Dean of School of Travel Industry Management in Hawaii. He passed away some years ago. So he left me alone. He said, you don't expect any help from me, and you have to do it on your own. So I was on my own. I was my own advisor. I was my own consultant. I was doing everything myself. So I had to find my reading materials, etc. And it was not easy to find reading material in tourism. Why? You people don't realize that before the computers, there was something called card catalogs. So you had to go to card catalogs and looking for the items, the books, the articles you're looking for. And it was not easy because tourism would not be indexed as such. So you could find hundreds of books on sociology, economics, etc. But tourism, it's not something they would catalog as such. But still, I found a chapter here, a page there, a page there. I read all the publications of what we call today WTO. It was called IUOTO before it joined the United Nations. So I read all of those, and there was nothing else to be read, actually. I had read anything that you could find in tourism. which if you pile it up would be not more than 0.5 meter high in volume. And there were at the time 2 journals. I wouldn't call them journals. Maybe the proper word would be bulletins. But they were journals. One of them was IS from the association, the European Association. And the other one was TTRA Bulletin. I think that was the original name.
Yes.
That later on became Journal of Travel Research. So these were the 2 journals in the field. Both of them were affiliated with associations. And therefore, by definition, they had to convey the voice and the needs and the expectations of the members. And I said, well, a journal cannot be subject to a voice. A journal has to have its own voice, not to be dominated by memberships and so on and so forth. So I said, I told myself I want to start a freestanding journal. And that is how Annals came about. The second semester, I was at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. For those of you not familiar with the geography of USA, we are in the news. Wisconsin is in the news, not for good reasons, for the coronavirus. The state of Wisconsin is doing the worst in USA, almost the worst on the top. We are north of Chicago, in case you want to have a sense of geography. So the second semester I was here, I started Annals. I think it was October or November of the year, the first year that I arrived. It was I was very ambitious. So I began having a monthly journal. So green and immature I was, and I thought I could do it monthly. Well, soon I realized it's not possible to do a monthly journal because I was teaching full time. And Annals was a side job for me. And I'm at a university that research is not on the top. It's a teaching institution. So I was not getting any flexibilities there for what I was doing. I had to do it on my own. So later on, I changed it to bi-monthly, and eventually I became wise. And I said, well, why do I do that? Let's do what all the journals, academic journals are doing. Let's go quarterly. So we went quarterly, maybe after 4 or 5 years, etc. So that's how it began. I don't know if you want me to continue hanging with this, or you want to interject questions in the middle of this to make it more dialogue and interesting.
That would be appropriate. I think for those of us who are not quite familiar with academic journal, the tradition of academic journal typically is a quarterly publication. In other words, publishers publish 4 issues per year. That's the more common pattern. Publish 4 issues a year, and making the 4 issue a volume. That's the tradition. But now, I mean, later on, journal publication shifted to what we see today, the online publication mode. The online publication mode turns traditional journals into, for example, bi-monthly publication, and some even get it to monthly publication. So that means there are more papers published in every year. And so that's a pattern of publication. Traditionally, it's quarterly, mostly quarterly, 4 issues per year, but later on, now change on to online publication. And the other feature of academic journal is the peer review feature. Authors submit a paper to a journal, and the editor handle the review process. We call this double-blind review. In other words, the author does not know who is the reviewer, and the reviewer does not know who the author is. So that's a double-blind review process. And the reason of having all these procedures in place is to assure a kind of original contribution to the body of knowledge, or of what we call tourism or tourism studies today. And I think in Jafar's chief editorship of Annals, the journal has grown from a less standard or not so standard publication and increasingly becoming more and more standard and now becoming the leader of journal publications in the field. Jafar, if I can further push a question, my take will be, or maybe my question will be to invite you to reflect on the journals, on Annals of Tourism Research in the 80s, in the 90s, in 2000s, and then in 2010. If you can, reflect on major changes in this 10 year up to 2010, for example, that will be very helpful for the audience.
Okay, sorry, Jafar, sorry. Shall I ask you a follow-up question? Because you just mentioned that you started publishing annals, on a monthly basis first. So the number of issues, is starting from every month. So how long it takes, to jump from monthly, issues to, let's say, bi-monthly or, quarterly, and why did you change your decision from from the publishing the journal on a monthly basis? So did you experience any problems?
Yeah, let me explain that, and I will come to your question as well. As I mentioned, I was full-time teaching full-time at the university here, so I had to do annals on my own. Doing a monthly issue while I'm teaching full-time. And let me define full-time for you at my university is 12 credits. Okay. So some of you who teach in graduate schools and you teach 6 credits, you say, wow, I have a full-time load. No, you don't. According to us here, you are half-time load. So it was the availability of time and availability of material, because there was not an academic engine producing articles. I had to beg for articles. I was not getting submissions. I would write to people like Eric Cohen, to Denison Nash, etc. And I said, well, how about if you, I have read your article, how about if you do this and that and send me? So it was always by invitation and through the well-known colleagues whom I did not know, some of them in person. I knew them through their works. So individuals like Eric Cohen, who is with us, he is the most distinguished, iconic professor of sociology of tourism. He is the most, he's a very productive scholar on practically any subject of tourism. And he's now living in Thailand after retirement from University of Jerusalem. He went to Thailand. So that's how I began, and I had to beg for articles to have the journal going. And my colleagues, immediate colleagues and other colleagues whom I saw at conferences, they said, are you sure you can have a second issue, a third issue, a fourth issue? Even the people were not giving me confidence that I should do, because they thought we have exhausted. There's nothing else to be told. That was the note. So I had to change it to bi-monthly, and I thought that would give me enough time to secure more articles and also find more time to do it. Again, it proved to be wrong because of time shortage and because of submissions that were not coming, because still I was doing by invitation. I think it took about 4, 5, maybe 6 years that the story changed. We went to quarterly, and I began receiving submissions, and the journey became smoother. But even at the later years, I continued to be full-time here in teaching, and I had to do annals on my own. So now going to Hungen's, some of the evolution, I think you were talking how the tourism journals evolved and basically using Annals as an example to talk about that evolution. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't want tourism to be, Annals to be a generic tourism journal. I wanted it to have a focus. So that's why I called it Annals of Tourism. And about 5-6 years later, I added the subtitle to it, a social sciences journal. And it has remained a social sciences journal. This basically meant we have to shy away some of the hardcore areas of tourism if they do not blend with social sciences. I recall there were times I would receive pure marketing articles. And I said, this is an excellent article, but send it to a marketing journal. I know Metin Kozak is a marketing person, so he understands what I mean. Yeah. So writing a marketing study within the context of tourism is very different than writing a marketing article. So I had to work with those marketing people, management people, even some geography people that is not all geography, it's geography of tourism, to bring social science into the dialogue. There were some really nice articles in economics, hardcore economics, and I said, well, it doesn't belong to us because it is so quantified and doesn't speak to the social fabric of the. So we had these challenges, and eventually people figured out what Annals is, and the right articles began coming. And that Hungen gave birth to other journals that decided to have other areas of specialization, such as marketing. In Hong Kong Polytechnic University, you're home to the Journal of Travel and Tourism Marketing, but here's a perfect example. Then destination journals, ecotourism journals, and go on, management journals, economics journals, in tourism, I mean. Hungen, you have the latest statistics on the number of journals. You got it from Bob McCretcher. Would you inform us?
Yes, my colleague, Bob McCretcher, has been maintaining a list of journals, and according to his list, he suggested we have about 380 active legitimate journals publishing on tourism, hospitality, and events. And there are roughly some 40 other journals, which are either open access journal or what he called predatory journal, meaning not so legitimate, not so good journal. But anyway, there's a very good number of journals now publishing in our field, 380. But the question, I mean, certainly remains as to why this many, or do we really need this many, or things like that.
Yeah, and that is really a legitimate question to be asked. A field of a study which the best credit we can give to us is it has 50 years of history, academic history. So why a field with less than 50 years of academic history has that many journals, like 400? Now, those of you who might be from, your majors might be economics or sociology or anthropology or psychology, etc. Ask yourself how many journals you have in your fields, like economics. Economics has 400 years of scholarship, but it doesn't have 400 journals. So that is a good question to ask us, how come, why do we have so many journals? And in a way that has diluted the research in many areas, because there are that many hungry journals looking for articles, and practically second tier, fourth tier, any paper would be accepted for publication. So the standard, the control is going down because they feed into 400 journals. You know, we are talking about, if you say, if we assume all of them are quarterly, and most majority of them are, assuming they publish 10 articles per issue, so that's 40 articles per journal, times 400, we get about thousands of articles that is produced annually by academic community. Do we need that many articles? Do we need that many books? So on and so forth. But let's go back to Annals and weave all of these things together, because we want to talk about characteristics of tourism research changing. So when I entered in the field of academic tourism, it was only understood in business sense only. I recall very clearly in 1974, I published an article in Annals, which was about socioeconomic costs of tourism, cost, negative. That was the first time ever an article was published that said anything negative about tourism. And I received a number of letters, not emails, we had no emails then, letters from colleagues from the industry telling me, what is this rubbish? This word is in quotation mark, that word was used. What is this rubbish you are publishing? You are either in tourism or you are not. If you are not, get out of it. It was that kind of reaction coming from the industry when Annals began. So nobody was looking at tourism as a socio-cultural, socio-economic phenomenon, not as a phenomenon, only as a business. So that was a struggle that I had, and also explained to me that doing a journal, we are not a travel agent. I don't know the best deals. I don't know the best packages. You know, that's what they thought I was doing. So what I did, I said, why should I invent everything? There are other well-established fields out there, such as those I mentioned, economics, sociology, geography, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't I just borrow ideas from them? They have already done it. They have already made their mistake. They have had their own evolution, academic evolution. Why don't we borrow? And I borrowed generously from all of this field to create Annals the way it was and the way it has become and the way it is today. The word Annals itself, I stole it. I was, it's a personal story now. I was in the office of my colleague at University of Illinois, Chicago Circle. He's a professor of statistics. So we don't have commonality of subject, but we have the commonality of having been roommate at Cornell University. So we were friends. So I was in his office and I see a journal on his coffee table, Annals of Statistics. I even didn't know the word annals. I thought I misread it. Maybe it was annual. So I asked him, what is this about? So he explained to me, and I looked up the word annals. I said, wow, this is perfect. This is really the right word. Mm-hmm. So that's how I selected the name, Annals of Tourism Research. And as of some years after that, still people will call it Annual of Tourism Research, and wondering why I do 4 issues per year. So that's a different story. So this is the idea of borrowing. Then I looked over my shoulder and I see in these academic journals, other academic journals, they have special issues. I said, well, why don't we do special issues? So the first special issue ever coming out was by Annals. Then again, looking over my shoulder and Hong briefly touched on it, refereeing. I told myself, I don't understand all of these submissions because some of them are a little bit technical in the technical sense, or maybe too much of economics, which I don't understand fully, or too much of geography, which I don't understand fully. I'm anthropologist, cultural anthropologist. So I realized that I cannot be the only judge for an article. And I asked myself, what other journals in other fields are doing. They do referring, anonymous referring that Hangen explained what it is. So I started, Annals was the first one ever starting referring articles. It was never done before. And that is when my skin became very thick, really thick, because people attacked me that, how dare you send my article to be reviewed by outsiders and you even don't tell me who they are. So that is how the reaction was from the academic community for a while, until it was established that this is an academic procedure, that's the best way of doing it, and so on and so forth. So we brought refereeing system into the tourism journals. So we were the first one. And then also, English not being my own mother tongue, I realized that there are a large number of people in tourism whose mother tongue is not English. Actually, in my guesstimation, more than 60%, 70% of tourism academic persons are not native speakers of English. Most majority, they read and write in English as their second language or third language. Even if you look at these 400 journals that Metin mentioned, a large number of them, more than 50% of them are edited by colleagues whose second language is English. So I wanted to respect that. And I introduced two elements into Annals. And one was symbolic. And that is, I said, every abstract would be translated into French. And the reason I did French, because I had some understanding of French myself. And it was a very very important language. So we could not do it in every language. So I had to pick one. I picked French. And for many, many years, until the end of my, until I passed on Annals to John Tribe, French and English were the abstract, published them in abstract. And the second measure I introduced, I said the Annals would prefers American English, not British. Now, this is not negative. British English is the proper English. I acknowledge that. That is the difficult English. The proper ones, a paragraph, one sentence could be a paragraph, and so on. And the second, for somebody who's, for whom English is second language, British is a bit more difficult, unless you got your education in the United Kingdom. That's different. But for the rest of us, American English is simpler because of short sentences and so on and so forth. And that helped a lot. And the fact that English was not my own mother tongue, people who submitted articles to us and they were not native speakers, they felt more at home with me, let's put it this way. And I was very sensitive to those articles, paying attention to what they say rather than how they say it. I can give you one example to tell you how sensitive I was and how diligently we work with colleagues. I had a submission from China, that is early part of China, many, many years ago. That from somebody who's very famous in China now, in academic field. That article went through 5 or 6 revisions. It was not the concept, it was the writing. And we worked with the individuals until it worked out. So being sensitive to the writings of authors whose mother tongue is not English is very important for any editor, whether that editor is a native speaker of English or not. That is extremely important in the field of tourism, where majority of the authors do not have English as their first mother tongue. So I think I symbolically did that and it worked. and it helped. Then I give another example and then come back to you, Metin and Hungen. Then it came a time that I realized the volume of submissions is too many. And I cannot handle everything myself. So I came up with a concept, which I again stole from other fields, not my idea, coordinating editor. So it is an article which is dealing with cultural aspects of tourism or a balance of payments of tourism, etc., an academic paper. I said, well, I sent it to an economist and I asked this person to become the coordinating editor. And then he or she is free to send it to 3 referees in the field. But I encourage the coordinating referees again to continue with anonymous refereeing, double blind. And I encourage them to not send the article to all economists if this is an article in economics of tourism, or not all sociology. And further, I said, please do not send it to the people in the same country. Like anthropology that I studied in the United States is different than anthropology of the United Kingdom. So even the location of academic community makes a difference in the definition of the coverage of the field. So these are I try to truly make tourism as interdisciplinary, as multidisciplinary as possible. And I think that is a contribution that Annals made. So again, I don't want to continue because it becomes boring. So I come back to you, Metin, and Metin and to break in with questions.
This is very, very helpful and very detailed, information about the history of Annals. So I have one more question related to how Annals has become a role model for other tourism journals. So in one of our conversations, you said you never knew about what SSCA meant, when you received the letter from this, company. It was, I think, international sign, I don't know, ISI in that time. So now SSCA journals has become very popular now for us, mainly for the young generations in developing countries, because there are a kind of promotions for them to secure the positions in the university and so on. So what was the date of Annals to receive this recognition, being in the family of SSCA? Do you remember that?
Yes, you're talking about Social Science Citation Index.
Yeah. You are the first, I think, in tourism. Annals
is the first one that got this honor, if you wish, because that gives legitimacy in a way, if I may use that word, legitimacy to the field of tourism, because Social Science Citation Index never recognized tourism. That was the first time that this journal was recognized. And to be honest with you, as Metin said or implied, I wasn't so much aware of Social Science Citation Index. When I received it, of course, I could figure out what it is, but I never applied for it. It was selected because it was selected, but they have their own processes. But I know today, editors of new journals campaign to be recognized for Social Sciences Index. So that was endorsement, Metin, from outside of the field. Because tourism, to become accepted, it needs to have endorsement. Those of us who started tourism studies in the old days, it was not well recognized on our campuses. Again, I go back to my origin at Cornell University. I was in the graduate dormitory, and my fellow dormitory mates, they had at their doors, PhD student in chemistry, in physics, and so on and so forth. And here I have to say I'm a master's student in hospitality and tourism. Nobody would take me seriously. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know how to handle it. And whenever I said, I'm studying hotel management, they say, okay, would you give me a good rate when you become hotel manager? Or how do I buy tickets? where do I go for my vacation? So that it was not recognized on the campus as tourism, as a field of study. And we needed to have legitimation from universities as such, from academic towers like social sciences index, to say that yes, you have the means and ways to become recognized as scientific field of study. And I started actually using the word scientification of tourism. And a lot of colleagues whose mother tongue is English told me that this is not a good word. And I said, well, it communicates what I want to say, because I never thought, I have never said, and I never thought, never believed that tourism is a science. Tourism is not, to me, it's not a science. It is a social science. This is the best, at its best element, it is a social science. So I don't use the word science, and that is why I came up with the idea of scientification. And people said, okay, so what do you mean by scientification? I said, using scientific methods of research, methodology, proper methodology, literature review, etc. So that's what I meant by scientification. And many people understood. The word is not used, another word I fabricated that is now being used is tourismification or touristification. And I wanted to talk about the process that goes on to the destinations, and it's the community suddenly is touristified. That's why I'm making these words. But we had to play the game in the academic sense to be recognized in the academic club. And I'm very pleased that Annals played a role in that, and many other journals that followed. The sister journal of Annals was Tourism Management. Annals was the first one, and then Tourism Management came after that. I remember when they were considering Pergamon Press, it was there, not Elsevier. And they consulted with me, what do you think about tourism management, the start of it, etc. So while we are, the subject that you have selected for today is Annals, but I do want to recognize that there are some other fantastic top journals in the field, and I just named Tourism Management as one of them. There are a large, I don't want to name too many because then I end up leaving out some, and some people may not feel good. There are really good journals. Among the 400, there are some very top journals that you in the audience are familiar with them, and you have been fortunate to publish in them. Something which is important to me and I want to communicate at this point is students of tourism have the tendency of zooming and zooming and zooming and zooming on tourism and isolating tourism from everything else as if tourism is an independent island. It is not. Again, remember, it's a social science field of study. And I emphasize, I always work better with individuals whose mother discipline is not tourism. His mother field of study is not tourism. Somebody who studied in geography, economics, psychology, political science, etc., then discovering tourism and coming into tourism. These people brought with them a load of knowledge from their respective fields of study. The reason that we did a journey of tourism scientification in 50 years and it took sociology and economics 400 years is because we borrowed. They invented ideas then, but we borrowed. So their learning quickly came to us. And that is why our history is shorter, but our accomplishment is very, very impressive. So I encourage the younger people in the audience, please do not zoom in tourism and zoom out everything else. Tourism in itself doesn't exist. So I hope you continue with your original studies of geography, anthropology, psychology, and I go on and on and on, and so the juice, the roots, your roots are in those fields and the fruits are tourism. Back to you, Metin and Hongyan.
Yeah, Hongyan, I will have another question, I think, which is just going to be the follow-up, question for what Jafar just mentioned. I think until perhaps, early this century, Jafar, Annals also played an important role, in terms of, importing knowledge from other fields and to build up a ground for tourism studies in academic terms. Now we have almost 400 journals. Many of them could be in English, or the majority or all, I have no idea. So do you have any specific comments? You just made a comment for the recommendation for the young scholars to do something more original, but do you have any more specific comments to how to export this tourism knowledge or the knowledge in tourism produced by tourism journals to other non-tourism journals or to other fields out of tourism?
This is an excellent question. This is the area that we have not succeeded. We always imported. Think of a country that always imports. That country that cannot survive. It has to export too. So we have been very generous importing, and the loads of knowledge have been coming freely and easily. But the time has come to export knowledge. If they still do not recognize us in those fields, point a finger at ourselves. Why don't we publish our tourism articles in their journals? And this is a bit disappointing, or I don't know how to say it. A number of people who came from other fields of tourism, their PhDs were in other fields, they came to tourism and they took residency in tourism and gradually forgot about their mother disciplines, and they rarely publish in their mother disciplines. And that is the problem. I think we should do our best to publish in other fields, the same way that I see other people from other fields come and publish in ours. So why don't we have a reciprocity of knowledge going on? And this is not really taking place. I'm not saying that people are not publishing in other journals. We have a lot of people among us, iconic professors of hospitality and tourism, who publish in other fields. So they kept their channels open, but most majority, they have, including myself, I have not published anything recently in journals of anthropology. So I'm pointing a finger at myself as well. So it's easy to become comfortable with where you are. And most of us have become very comfortable with tourism. I hope we begin to export knowledge. I mean, for you and I to understand tourism, we read books on culture, on economics, on acculturation, on commercialization, all these processes. So we read articles and books not intended for us. We are not the intended audience. I think there should be the other way around too. I've said this many times. I would be very proud of ourselves, of our field, if I see a pure tourism, a pure sociology student or anthropology or geography student, I see this person is carrying a book with a tourism book with him. And I say, but you're a student of geography, you're a student of economics. Why this book? I say, oh, I want to see how export-import works with a invisible industry called tourism, rather than commodity export-import. I want to see how the culture makes a difference in export-import, etc. So if there's a day that the students of economics, students of political science are reading an article in tourism or a book in tourism, we have arrived. That would be the time that the mission Metin has been accomplished, and it has become reciprocity.
Okay, yes, Hongyan.
Yeah, if I could offer a view on this as well. I think the development of tourism as a field of study itself has now resulted in a kind of paradox. for the whole field. In other words, we are now having more and more universities doing tourism programs. So from an education point of view, there are more programs, more universities engaged in tourism education. Likewise, in the research field, there are more journals, more books published, and the team is getting bigger, the community is getting bigger. We have many, many graduate students working on tourism. So as a result, the whole community is growing, and then people are getting more and more what we call, inbreeding or inward looking. It will be great, if we can dismantle tourism education from an institutional point of view. For example, I don't know how many universities in Turkey have tourism programs. In China or Hong Kong, we have quite many universities doing, working on tourism. And then so we become a community by ourselves, and then it's big enough for us. As a pool of water, it's big enough as a forest. It's big enough for all for tourism. It will be great. I think it's the duty or even the responsibility of advisors, PhD advisors, to raise the kind of self-awareness of tourism PhD students. For example, PhD students in tourism, for them to have the type of awareness that we should work together with sociology people, with anthropology people. Likewise, in sociology and anthropology, we should encourage lay students or candidates to work on tourism topic. I think that could be something to think about. When we are small, when tourism is only a very small field, we hope it grows bigger. But when it grows really big, and like what we are having today, then we begin to worry about it and what the problems we are having. Back to the journal, I think it's good to keep in mind a good, up-to-date number of journals. But I think the number really implies or really means they are. The number is, the 400 or so journal are not completely English journal. It includes journals published in Korean, published in Chinese, published in Turkish, right, and journals published in India, in many different countries. And now it becomes a question here. If it's journal published in one language, I don't think it will goes up to that number. But if I don't know exactly how many to go by each language, but clearly the calculation comes from different language communities. So the question behind this will be, tourism research published in Turkish language, in Turkish journals, and tourism research published in Chinese language, in Chinese journals, tourism research published in Korean language, in Korean journals, and likewise in English journals, in English language. Are they repeated reproduction of similar kind of work? Is it necessary? How can research, for example, excellent tourism research published in Turkish, get communicated to the English people or to the Chinese reading people, so that unnecessary repetition can be avoided? It's a huge waste to repeatedly produce the same type of work, which has already been published in other language, in other journal. I think this is some thoughts, in response to the questions that you raised. But from Annals of Tourism Research standpoint, if any of us in the audience is interested in the history of tourism studies or a state of the art of tourism research or tourism knowledge, I should say starting from late 1970s, particularly in 1980s, Annals of Tourism Research has published some very good special issue. If you are, for example, if you are, working on a topic and wants to do a very good literature review, literature review that begins with the right time or maybe trace back to the origin of research on that topic, that would be a very good starting point. For example, the special issue on tourism education, special issue on tourism sociology of tourism, gender issues in tourism, semiotics of tourism, etc. Very typically social science topic. And so if you are interested in that, that will be a very good starting point to check. Metin, do you want to continue asking, or do I pose 2 more questions?
Let me interject.
Please.
Hangen, you just gave Metin another topic for a future webinar. We were talking about journals and dissemination and popularity of journals, and then Hangen gave the example of number of universities teaching hospitality and tourism. So we can ask the same question. We asked the question, do we need 400 journals in tourism? Do we need that many universities teaching hospitality and tourism? Do we need that many students if a good percentage of them cannot find jobs in hospitality and tourism? I am not talking about COVID era. I'm talking about before that. I do recall reading some statistics from Cornell University graduates of hotel management that more than 50% of them do not go to the hotel management business. This is not a recent number. So you yourself, Hangen, you are in Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and Metin yourself, and a number of professors right here, you can, if you have statistics, what percentage of students trained to go to hospitality and tourism do not go and go to banking or other management ideas. So you get some—
Majority of them do not work in tourism in Turkey.
They do not. So
big majority.
Okay, so the question is, maybe we are not targeting the right subject. Maybe we are, there is something that we are not doing right. Imagine that if we are teaching medicine and a good percentage of our students do not go to medical field, that's unheard of, unthinkable. But it is so acceptable for us. So maybe tourism is a camouflage subject and can have different personalities. I don't know that. So that gives you a good topic for discussion. But I want to benefit from Hangen being here with us on this panel. And one of the things that Annals, I'm going back to Annals. One of the things that Annals did, it came up with the idea and the practice of cumulative subject index. In other words, before there were annual subject index, and I said, well, that doesn't help. Today we have electronic means, it doesn't matter. But in the 80s, cumulative subject index was extremely important. So a researcher did not have to go to the last issue of each volume to see what items have been. And so I invited one of our associate editors earlier, Margaret Swain, to start it. And later on, we passed on the responsibility to Hangen, who has done a wonderful job. So he has been the curator of knowledge, if you wish, by indexing some many volumes of annals. Many times when I hit the wall, I go to Metin and I say, whom do you know in this subject area? And on the top of his tongue is the answer. He knows the people, the specialties, etc., which gives you maybe a suggestion that to some of the younger people among us, that you want to accept this kind of responsibilities to become curator of knowledge, manager of knowledge, academic knowledge, I mean. And this way you are doing yourself a service, reading all the articles in order to index them, and then you're on the top of the literature. And before I come back to you, Metin, I want to say that I see your brother Nazmi in the audience. Hello, Nazmi. I cannot greet everybody, but he's in the audience, and we thank you for all you are doing. You two brothers are fantastic, not only in Turkey, but also internationally. So congratulations for all you have done and you're doing. Back to you, Metin.
Okay, so we have a, I think we have the question, one question from the audience asking about how did you manage, you know, choosing the best paper, you know, in your journal writing. But as far as I know, you never, you know, promoted or, you know, announced that you published the best paper, you know, awards and so on in Annals. I think this is my, you know, observation from your journal.
I missed the beginning of the question. How did I what?
How did you choose the best paper in your journal? You know, some of journals now today just promote, you know, the best papers every end of the year, you know, so it's a kind of, you know, publicity or promotion.
I have the answer to that question. Ready?
Yeah.
You only publish the best papers. You cannot choose the best out of the best.
Yeah, yeah.
So the journal that has the best paper, this implies some of them are not good.
Jafar, shall I ask you, how you could, you know, compare the journal editing or reviewing process between the traditional times in, you know, using this, you know, email system and the system that we use, you know, now today by making use of the technology. So still we have, you know, submit papers to different journals and we have to wait for not years, but months to get, you know, decision of the, you know, the paper. And then it takes another few months or years to get it published in an issue. So how was the system in your time, you know, when you used this traditional, you know, mailing system? I remember in the end of 90s, so I just posted my paper to you by post, by email. And then I received this, I think the decision, it was 3 or 4 months later. But now I'm managing the, you know, journal Anatolia, editing the journal, and it takes not less than 2 or 3 months to get a decision in electronic terms.
Yes. Well, you're talking about pre-electronic period, and it was by posting articles. 4 copies of an article has to be posted, mailed to me. And then I keep 1, send 3 of them to coordinating referee, etc. And then back and forth, it would take time. So to give a concrete answer to your very good question is go to the old issues of Annals. Each article ends by saying when it was submitted, when it was revised the second time, the third time. Some of them took 3 years, if not 4, from the date of submission to the date of publication. But knowledge then was not become outdated as fast as it becomes outdated now. That's the difference, maybe. And also we were more patient then. Today, you have a student, I have a student, or young scholars, and say, oh, I have been waiting for 2 months to hear. 2 months is nothing if you compare it with, in the old days, for waiting for 2 years or 3 years. So we have become more impatient scholars, not only in studying, because we go to any article, we look at it and click it off, close it, go to the next article. In the old days, when we digged and found the article physically, we sit down and read it because the next search would take more time. So it's just the culture, the system, technology has changed. So with this research and scholarship changes as well.
So I think this printing the date of, you know, submission and the date of publishing could be another benchmark that we can learn from Annals. I think then the other journals just, you know, started following up the style of your journal, I think.
Yeah, that's good communication, because when I started publishing that process of submission to the publishing, then I would not receive letters from people or later on emails. How long typically it takes us? I just take a typical issue of Annals, look at the end of each article, you get the answer yourself.
Yeah. Yes, there is a question from Zayed. It says, as in other fields of study, predatory journals seem to have penetrated our field. I am wondering if Professor Jafari feels concerned about that. What should be done to stand against predatory journals or publishing?
I didn't grasp the question. Would you rephrase it for me?
Zaid is complaining about the number of, increasing number of predatory journals. Okay, in our field. So he asks about your comments, how we can keep ourselves out, away from this, this predatory journals, as the authors or as the editors, perhaps.
It's not a subject I have thought about of basically dealing with this negative situation.
We're not talking about genuine journals, so I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. My answer is that I go to the website of that suspect journal, yeah, and look at the editorial board. Do you recognize any of the names? That would be a sort of background checking. And also the list of those journals. Hagen told us that Bob McRacher had in his list has about 30, 40 of those journals. So there are ways of getting somebody else's judgment or form your own judgment. If you want to form your own judgment, look at the back issues and particularly look at the editorial board. So, and also if they charge money, if it is it's a business or if it's a journal.
So you remember, you also charge a small amount of money, in dollars. It's about $25 or $30 for those, papers accepted, to translate the English abstract into French.
Excuse me, let me correct you. It was $10 only.
Well, I recall that I posted to you, I think it was about $20 or $25.
Impossible. I was just cheating you. Maybe I wanted to collect from you twice.
No, it could be
$10 fixed.
The funny things was that, I need to post it to you by mail, so it was.
There's a question here from one of the audience, and I think the question has to do with the value of viewpoint papers. The value of viewpoint papers from the editor's standpoint.
I like that question myself, and Hagen, and those who know Annals, there was a department in it, and maybe still is. I haven't checked recently. It's called commentary and rejoinder, rejoinder and commentary.
Rejoinder and commentary, yes.
Okay, I don't know if I haven't checked the latest issue to see if they do it or not. That is exactly what it is. I do value opinion, because opinion becomes a dialogue, leads into a dialogue. So in Annals, we had two different departments. One of them was research note. Research note means you have not reached the ultimate goal that you wanted, but you have something substantial to report. Or rejoinder that I often, when I send the article out for review and I got, let's say 2 positive, 1 negative, but the one which was negative was insisting that the article should be rejected. I said, no, I'm going to accept it. Then later on, you write a rejoinder and say why this article is not valuable or what's wrong with it. And since it was anonymous, the author would never know that he or she was the person who rejected it. So that is a good exercise. And I borrowed again that idea from anthropology. Current Anthropology Journal had exactly rejoinders. I stole that idea, brought it to Annals, and it worked. So opinion should be stated, not, actually Annals started some opinion articles. I think John Tribe maybe started that, I can't remember. So yes, we have finished articles and we should have opinion pieces. It's like the old days, like letters to the editor, basically. This is the same, a continuation of the same idea.
So one more question is, Jafar, it's a very brief question. What do you think about the self-citations to those journals that we submit our paper?
I will answer that question, but let me also make one point regarding the commentary and so on and so forth, and then I come to yours. In the case of rejoinder, I always had to tell the people who write the rejoinders not to attack the author, but to attack the theory, the methodology. And this was very hard. They would name the person that the author, David, John, Mary, they would attack the person. We are not attacking the person. We are attacking the book. We are attacking the study. We are attacking the methodology. And this was very hard to do. We had a section called book reviews. Again, some reviewers attack the author. Author is not the one who's reviewed. His book, her book is being reviewed. And this is something that the younger generation have to keep in mind, that you are not reviewing the author, but the work of the author. Now, coming to your question, and I forgot it now. Would you repeat it, Metin?
Well, self-citations to those journals.
Self-citation, yes, yes.
To the authors, to journals.
Well, self-citation, there are two ways to think about it. One is I want to communicate that this is a continuation of what I have been doing. So I would refer to the first article or the second article, but I would stop there. That's enough. But then you see some articles that are basically quotations after quotations, direct or non-indirect quotations from the person himself. So basically borrowing paragraphs here and there and coming up with an article, gluing together as an article. I don't like those. Those are not, I would not consider them academic journals, but that is self-marketing maybe.
Yeah. Okay, Ongen.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want me to comment?
Well, you may choose that. We have, I think, 2 questions from the audience now.
No, actually, just now, I mean, I may just make a comment on the viewpoint paper, or the same question on viewpoint papers. Viewpoint paper usually is very forward-looking and should be on the very edge, and so that a topic can be brought to the forefront and then discussed to some extent, and the whole purpose of publishing such a piece is to lead future research on that topic. And I believe different journals do this differently. Rejoinder commentary is one form, and book, not so much book review, but research note in a way, yes. And some journals, like a Chinese journal published in the Chinese language, they call it reflection piece. Every issue, the first 10 to 12 page, every issue, they publish reflection piece. And this reflection theme for the reflection piece was predetermined a year before. For example, this year, all associate editors will be invited to come up to propose themes for reflection piece. So each associate editor who propose a reflection theme will be assigned the associate editor in charge of that session. So at the beginning of each issue, there's a reflection piece. But some other journals may just devote a whole issue to invited paper, which are very reflective, and it's very much like opinion piece or viewpoint paper. Yeah, I think different forms. It take very different form, and the whole purpose of publishing these from an editor's standpoint is to lead, is to throw out some good ideas so that people can further pursue a particular line of research.
Yeah, this is an excellent point, and which leads me to another point. In the articles, in submissions to Annals, the years I was the editor, I did not allow the use of first person pronoun. You could could not say that I think or my data suggest. So it has to be always in third persons to make it more objective. But where I allowed for the person to use his own, her own voice was in the commentary section, or what you call reflection. That is where I becomes, I think, in my opinion, because it's an opinion piece anyway, therefore it's my opinion. So we have to make this, as of today, I prefer third person, use of third person pronoun in academic journals, but I see that it's becoming more and more common to have first person pronouns. As an anthropologist in my field, it is first person pronouns. It's acceptable, totally acceptable. But in some other fields, it's not. And I brought that to tourism, but tourism has matured, so maybe we can do the mixture as we are doing the mixture already. And that is also important. The one thing that didn't come up, but I do want to confess and add as our departing point, because we are already beyond 1 hour limit, it's going to 90 minutes. When I started my journey in tourism studies, I was in search of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. That's exactly what was my idea, knowledge for the sake of knowledge. That was many, many moons ago. But later on, I woke up to the reality that what do we do with this load of knowledge if it is just sitting there and collecting dust? In my time, in later times, we write this PhD, glorified PhD thesis, give 4 copies to the university, that one goes to the library and collects dust. No, electronically it doesn't collect dust, but many of them have the same fate. Because it's just theory for the sake of theory, knowledge for the sake of knowledge. In the later years, I realized that application is very important. And I am now advocating another concept that I began, bridging tourism theory and practice. I truly believe in that. It has to be applied. Just hoarding knowledge and piling it up somewhere is not useful. I know it's good for understanding, for knowledge formation, etc. But tourism is, after all, a phenomenon and a practice, an operation. We call it industry. So we have to find application for the knowledge we have. Just ask ourselves how useful we have been during the COVID-19. How academic people have been useful. We are just sitting back like everybody else, waiting for the vaccine to be developed. Are other fields just sitting and waiting? Can't we use our knowledge to have plan B, plan C, etc., etc.? We never thought that way. We never understood that way. And I encourage the younger generation, yes, knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but then knowledge for the sake of application. And I want to use medicine as my example. Medical students do both. It's theory and practice. And the best thing that happened, and I really admire them, right at the beginning of COVID-19, it was one of the universities of New York, if I recall correctly. The students had 1 more semester to go to become medical doctors. They graduated them 1 semester sooner and gave them the credentials and said, go to the field. How many universities of hospitality and tourism gave the degree to the students and said, go and help the industry? Our students are even trained after they get 4 years or 6 years of education by the industry. So I think we should, we always talk about this gap between academia and the industry. Well, guess who is responsible for the gap? We created the gap. We distance ourselves from them. And then we use a language that is not the language of the industry. Many of us, including myself, have a hard time to write something which is palatable by the industry. So those of younger people, maybe you want to consider to write for 2 communities. One of them would be academic community and one for the industry. And to improve that, I started this book series called Bridging Tourism Theory and Practice. And recently we started a new institution, Tourism Intelligence Forum, and it has only one goal, and the goal is transfer of knowledge to and within tourism. That's the only goal it has. And we have conferences every 2 years. Ours was supposed to be in March. We had to postpone it to November, hoping that by November it will be, the vaccine would be found, etc. Well, it didn't happen. So we are going to do it 100% online on November. There's no other choice like anybody else. There are some lessons to be learned. And I also spoke about the importance of language and application, also claiming that majority of scholars in the field of tourism, their mother tongue is not English. We started a new webinar series, which is called Small Community Tourism Webinars. And this is for the forgotten sector of the tourism industry, which I call the informal sector. Formal sector are those giant entities, mass destination, mega cities, mega destinations, mega chain hotels, mega airlines, etc., etc. But nobody talks about little entrepreneurs and little communities, villages, rural communities that have been in tourism. They are totally neglected, particularly now. They don't know where to go, they even don't know what questions to ask. And if they have a question, they do not know from whom they should ask the question. The formal industry has channels of communication with the government, with others, with banks, with other sources. Informal doesn't. So we started that, and then suddenly I woke up that we are not communicating with the bulk of the audience who may not be speaking English. So we do that webinar now in 2 ways. One, we do it in English. We did all the time small communities, small entrepreneurs. And we started doing local languages. We already did one webinar last semester, totally in Farsi, in Persian, with the scholars within Iran and Iranians outside of Iran. The next one is going to be in Portuguese language. Again, the same formula, 100% in Portuguese, with the scholars within Portugal and outside. The next one is Chinese in December, December 14. Well, I know at least one person who would enjoy that, and that's Metin. Hangen. I think it's December 14 in Beijing, but ours is going to be online. So it's between Chinese. Therefore, we have 2 kings of tourism right now among us, the Kozak's brother. I invite you to do one of the future webinars in Turkish, which would have audiences not only in Turkey, but in other Turkish-speaking countries.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jafar. Well, I have one more question. I think this is going to be the last question to ask you. Well, this is a question from our young student. She got a master degree in tourism. She asked about your advice, how to carry on, in which field she needs to carry on studying in the future as a master student in tourism.
Well, I don't think anybody can answer that question because I don't know where she wants to go.
Give some examples like anthropology, geography, sociology, and so on. So just
yeah, but what does she want to do with the study? What does she want to do with the degree? What kind of job?
She looks for an academic career.
Again, my answer is a generic answer. I have given it and I continue saying it. I do not believe in PhD in tourism, only tourism. I don't believe in that. It has to have a well-established academic home like social sciences. Mm-hmm. And with that foundation, take as many tourism courses as you want and write a thesis. I did exactly that. I was a regular anthropology student. I convinced my professor to do tourism. Tourism, what do you mean? I said, give me a chance. Give me a chance. And I wrote a PhD dissertation. And let me give you 2 more examples to see how much I had to fight. I was taking a course in archaeology. And I wrote a paper for that archaeology course. That was my PhD study. Combining archaeology and tourism that archaeology and tourism can work together because tourists love archaeology diggings, the findings finally go to the museum. Who goes to museum? The tourists go to museum. I made all of that argument and documented. The professor felt insulted. How dare you combine archaeology and tourism? And I did one for museum and tourism, again, the same reaction. In museum, we don't think tourism, but guess what they are thinking right now? 95% of the customers are tourists and they are tourist oriented. So I went through the times that nobody could see the value of tourism, but now unfortunately they see too much value in tourism. And that's why we have 400 journals and that we have so many universities everywhere and graduating students, they don't know what to do with them.
Okay, good. Yes, Ongen, do you have any further questions?
No.
Comments?
There are two more questions in the chat.
Yeah, because could you please just summarize these two questions together? They were, I think they're asking about the trends in tourism research in the future.
I mean, the two questions are somewhat related. One is the trend of tourism research from what has been published.
Second is the same almost.
The other is what are your favorite article topics, not as an editor, but as a reader. From a reader standpoint, what are the favorite subjects you read? I think that's my interpretation of the question. And the other one is what are the trends of published research by subjects?
Okay, the ring is mine. I'm sorry, just a second.
If I can mumble
Would you like to answer this question, Ongen? Which trends do you think?
Okay.
Yeah.
From today's standpoint,
first of all, which articles I love to read, being an anthropology, anything which has to do with culture, because that is where I get the meaning of tourism. Tourism is, after all, a cultural manifestation. You know, when you go from Turkey to France, from France to Germany, from Germany, it's cultural, a crossroad of cultures, crossroad of religion, crossroad of everything. So to me, culture, society is in the center, and the other subject would help us to understand the phenomena. That's the way I would look at it. As what to study, I would not, personally, I do not look at trends in the sense of saying which are the hot topics and therefore I'm going to study that. I think the topic, if you are younger generation, those of you who are in the younger generation in search of topics, please, and I emphasize, please choose something that you like. It's a dialogue between your heart and your mind. Listen to your heart. If your mind tells you to do A, but your heart doesn't like it, it's not going to happen. Research is a tedious work and you must love it. So if you don't like the subject, you will not succeed. Choose the one that you like. So when people write to me, and I receive a lot of articles from Asia, a lot of inquiries from Asia, because they always look for guidance. What topic I should choose? I said, well, which are your three top topics that you like? Write it down. Then go to a lead journal and read 3 articles about each of these topics that you like. Really read 3 articles about each one of them. And then sit back and re-rank the 3 topics that you selected. The one that comes on the top is the one that you want to choose. So you have to choose the one that you like, not the one that your professor recommends, not the one that happens to be a hot topic and tourism is going in that direction. If your direction and the direction of tourism are not the same, don't walk alone. Go take your own walk, walk where you want to walk, and live with a topic that you like. And that is the rewarding way to do it. I did it my way, and I invite you to do it your way. I started with, I was a tour guide. So that's how I became originally when I was very young, 20 years old, tour guide. That led me to study of hotel management. I didn't see hotel management in myself. I convinced the university to let me do tourism. And then I wasn't fully satisfied with tourism because then it was all numbers. Tourists are coming and there was no theory behind it. So I graduated into anthropology. I found my way, and probably one of the reasons that I was became a bit innovative in the things I did is because of the perspectives I gained in anthropology, the spread of knowledge, the way that culture connects itself to everything and defines that relationship. So my answer to the question is, do not choose hot topics. Choose the topics that are hot in your heart.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jafar.
My pleasure.
Yeah. I think it is almost 1.5 hours. It's time to finish the session, the lecture. So thank you very much, Hongyan, for your co-moderating. And thank you, Jafar, as being our special guest for tonight, for this afternoon in Turkey, and for your time in US. So it was early morning for you, in your time. Well, thank you also to all our audience who came and participated in 1.5 hours. So it is not too much time, but it's also important part of our time. So thank you to all, and hope to see you next week for another lecture.
And thanks to you, Metin, to you and your brother for starting another journey. This is a good series. Stay with it, and it's very beneficial, especially now during these hard times in tourism.
Well, yes. Okay.
Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.